Welcome to the Gorgeous Gray podcast. I am Nicole Scott, your host, registered holistic nutritionist, rest mindset coach, author of the Gorgeous Gray movement, and the co-creator of the Menopause Reset program. In this podcast, we have real conversations about aging as a woman and all the pressure and uncertainty we feel as we head into menopause and beyond. Let's face it, aging is not an easy conversation to have. But I say it's time to talk about the messy middle and offer hope when we feel like giving up on ourselves. Let's talk about our fears around gray hair, our muffin tops, and even our dry, itchy vaginas and everything in between. I will help you reconnect to your feminine energy and offer real solutions from experts in their field to navigate aging as a woman. I believe we, as women, deserve to shine even brighter in this next chapter of life. So with a sense of humor and a lot of compassion, let's dive into these vulnerable conversations. Hello, and welcome, Gorgeous Gray ladies, to another episode on my podcast where we have real conversations about aging. And I have a really special guest from Toronto, Canada, Monika Eva. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today about all the things.
Absolutely. And I just want to introduce you to her Instagram. So you can go right there and follow her. It's just her name. So really easy, Monika, but it's Monika, just for spelling, then Eva, E-V-A. And she is a holistic practitioner and does many things in testing, including the saliva, which we're going to dive into. But she helps women who are frustrated with their doctor. And we're going to talk about that because I know that I was frustrated with my doctors over the years of telling me one thing and feeling differently, right? And she helps women release weight, regain energy and confidence, and working with a lot of women in that like age 35 to kind of 55 where changes start to happen. So I'm so glad you're on. You're a hormone coach. And you help a lot of women, thousands of women actually really start to bring their hormones, their gut health back into balance. So again, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
My first question and just kind of conversation of where I want to take this is, you're midlife, things are starting to change, weight's coming on, brain's not feeling great, energy starts to tank, go to the doctor, doctor's like, hey, everything looks good here. Everything falls in normal range. You don't need to come back and see me. They kind of do this and you go home and you're like, that was a waste of time. Or, well, maybe the doctor's right. Maybe this is just the new way that I need to feel or have to feel. Let's talk about that conversation because I am sure just about every day that is a typical client that comes to see you and they come to you because they're like, there's got to be a reason. Let's talk about that client.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. So I just want to say that it actually breaks my heart every time a woman sends me a DM or emails me or has this conversation where they think that what they're experiencing is actually normal and that this is part of being a woman and the aging process. And so first of all, it's not all the things are normal. Like, yes, there are going to be changes and some of them can be a little bit expected. However, to fully feel like, I just don't feel like myself in my body, that is not normal.
Yeah.
Right. And so the big thing too, I think, is that there is a lot of trust in our medical doctors. And I think that they're great at different things. I just don't necessarily know if, or like dealing with hormone imbalances and the transitions of women going from the reproductive state into perimenopause into menopause is something that we need to really say that, okay, that's their domain, like let them deal with it. I don't know if it really is.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell a personal story, and I actually haven't shared this yet on the podcast, but when I was kind of in my mid 40s, I had some lumps in my breast. And I also had some fibroids on my uterus that were showing up. And I went to a male doctor. Now, he was really cute. And that's like that really weird, awkward, where you literally have to be naked and it goes down and he has to check everything out. And I'm just like, why did they have to choose the like hottest doctor in town kind of thing, right? So anyways, long story short, new guy though, right? Fresh out of like university, maybe a couple years in. And it was interesting. I felt like it was like so scripted at the end where he's like, okay, here's your 5 options in regards to your fibroid on your uterus, right? And goes through like cookie cutter, like almost like textbook of what he got trained on. And the 5th one is like, or we can just remove your uterus. And I was like, what the I was like, are you kidding me? This is what you train. I have a small thyroid on my uterus, and you're giving me an option to remove my uterus. I just about crapped my, you know what? I was like, that is when, of course, I've been a nutritionist since I was in my 30s. So I mean, I knew that I wasn't going to go down any of the choices, but I'm like you, my heart broke because he's seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women that come in thinking that I might have to lose my uterus, and they might listen to it. And it's a fibroid, and we know what we can do to reduce fibroids. So I wanted to just start off with that is I've been down the rabbit hole with medical system telling you that you have to lose your body parts without talking any lifestyle or any nutrition. Okay, so let's dive into a conversation around. So you have a woman that has just left the doctor, and they're like, okay, they obviously have found you online or on Instagram, and you have a program. Where do you start the conversation with a woman who is almost like a little bit in shock, like the doctor said everything's fine, now they come to you? What kind of testing, what kind of conversation, what does that look like for an average woman? And maybe even an investment in price, because I also get like, I go to my doctor because it's free. So we need to talk about like the cost that we need to invest as a woman in our health, that there is going to be a price that we will pay. So let's dive into that conversation a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So when I first speak with any woman, I actually get them to fill out a little preliminary hormone assessment because number one, I want to make sure that I'm able to actually help them. I want to make sure that they have realistic expectations and that what they're experiencing is going to be related to hormones, because sometimes there's like other vital voids in the body where they're more serious things. Like if we're dealing with like cancers or anything like that's definitely the job for a doctor, right? Not for myself.
Yeah.
So it's out of my scope of practice, but that's kind of where we start off with. And I mean, I always recommend saliva hormone testing, or at least like, or dried urine testing. And the reason why is because blood work shows different levels of hormones. So I personally like the saliva hormone testing because I do find that it's sensitive to hormones. It measures the bioavailable hormones. So we know exactly what's available to be used by the body, not necessarily what's protein bound and just circulating in the blood, because that might not mean that it's enough to have the symptoms, right? And so, I mean, a lot of the women that enter my world, like they already know that they're not getting the answers that they want from their doctor. And they realize that their health is so important to them. It's worth the investment because it's actually costing them a lot more not to pay out of pocket for testing. Right? All that frustration, all that time and energy spent. I mean, spending like hundreds, probably thousands of dollars over the years on supplements that do nothing for them. They're just marketed with the right words. And it's very frustrating. And I know even like my mom, for instance, is an example. In the beginning, when she was transitioning into menopause, she was like, I don't know, my doctor said everything's fine, but like, I'm so tired all the time. And I'm like, you know, hot and sweaty and I can't really sleep. And I'm having these mood shifts. And apparently this is part of aging. And the blood work says everything is fine. And like, this is exactly what's supposed to be happening to my body, right? It just confirmed like we're transitioning into menopause. And the thing is, you know, being my mom, I feel like she kind of gave me a harder time about it than most people would. But I just said to her, like, let's see what's going on, because there are things you can do, even though your hormones are decreasing. We need to support things like your liver, your digestion, like take the stress off. And so when it came to spending like the couple $100 on getting the testing done, I mean, it was so worth it for her.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does it test? So I have had saliva tests before, but I'm going to say that most of the women that will be listening to this podcast is like, okay, I get a saliva test. What shows up for a saliva test? Like what, obviously we're looking for hormones. Does it go beyond hormones?
Yeah, so it definitely does. So there's different types of saliva hormone testing that you can get done. So it actually doesn't just measure hormone tests. So I do a combination of saliva and urine, but the saliva, so it'll measure diurnal cortisol, which is cortisol at 4 points throughout the day. We want to see what's happening with that cortisol rhythm because cortisol, I don't know how much you want me to get into this, but really
Let's dive in. We can definitely dive into cortisol because a lot of my women complain about weight issues.
right.
That links into the cortisol. So yeah, if you want to dive in as you're explaining it so that women can understand, what does that even mean? What is the cortisol pattern?
So yeah, for sure. So your cortisol is your stress hormone, but it's not all bad. Like we actually need a sufficient amount of cortisol so that when we wake up in the morning, we have the energy to get going and we don't feel all dizzy and lightheaded and lethargic. So our cortisol should actually peak first thing in the morning, and then it's slow, and then it has like a big drop in the noon, but then it gradually decreases. A lot of women though, especially as they get older, because they've gone through so much in their lives, like pregnancy and labor and delivery. And then you compact that with like natural stressors and just aging. And then, sometimes there's like marital breakdowns or other things, like all the stress compounds. And what happens is the body can't produce as much cortisol as it needs to. And so a lot of these women end up having dysregulated cortisol or cortisol that's very low. So like their total cortisol for the day is low. And because of that, they feel extra fatigue. And it's what I call like their body gets stuck in this fat storing, energy depleted mode. Right. So I see a lot of this, right? So this is why we want to measure cortisol, because cortisol can really be responsible for us feeling sluggish and tired and also holding on to weight. And the other thing that we measure is the progesterone and the estrogen. Now, in women who are in perimenopause, meaning they know that they're headed towards menopause, but they still get a cycle, it's just irregular. We want to see what's happening with those hormones as closely as we can track them to like their cycle as possible. But for women who are in menopause, we just want to see what's going on, like how much of that hormone is there, because we still want a healthy balance between progesterone and estrogen. If one dominates over the other in like this imbalance, we're going to see a lot of symptoms. Weight gain for sure, but mostly it's going to be things like mood issues, sleep issues, energy. Those are like the most common ones that I see. And then of course, like weight gain, right? Or bloating, water retention, like almost like that inflammatory aches and pains. And so we want to measure that. We also want to measure testosterone, because as we get older, we want to make sure we have sufficient levels of testosterone. A lot of times women think that testosterone is just a male hormone, but it's actually what keeps us nice and lean as we get older. It's also a good measurement for what's going on with our bone density, right? We want to have that healthy bone so we're not like breaking our hips and these types of things. We also measure the DHEAS, which is an androgen hormone, the precursor to testosterone. So in the hormonal pathway, DHEAS basically, it feeds into testosterone. But it can also be, or it also is a counter hormone to cortisol. So we want to make sure that those two are nice and balanced, because if we are higher in one than the other in an imbalance, then we're going to see different things. Like we might have more cravings, or we might feel, there might be like polycystic ovaries. And so these are things that we really need to watch out for. So that is what the saliva hormone testing measures. I also test melatonin during the to see what we basically don't want melatonin to peak at all at noontime, because that's when it should be at its lowest. Otherwise, this may be indicative of the immune system kicking in when it's not supposed to be. I measure SIGA. So this is just an antibody to let us know what's going on with gut health. Like, is there some sort of chronic distress in the gut. And that's usually like the first marker that I see that tells me, okay, we're either dealing with a leaky gut or there's a gut imbalance, and we need to investigate further if the nutritional and lifestyle changes we make don't make a difference.
Gotcha.
So
Okay, this is so good. Yes.
yeah. So
Keep on
it's
going.
yeah. So I mean, these aren't tests that your doctor will test you for. Like if you go in and say to your doctor, I want to get SIG-A and melatonin tested, they're going to look at you like you have three heads and say, I'm sorry, but this isn't covered by your health insurance plan, right? And that like, there's no way we can run these tests, or they're going to say it's outside of their scope of practice. And so this is also the benefit of investing into these tests, because it gives us insight into what's happening in your body that other tests wouldn't.
Yeah, I love that. So good. So I know that saliva tests were probably one of the first tests that I did when I started to gain a lot of weight, 45 years old, and was able to kind of keep a 145 was kind of like my base weight, you know, going through my years. And then I went from 145 to 180, like in 1 year, doing nothing different. Right. And I tell the women, like, I know your pain and, you know, and all that stuff. And so I love that you're working in that age group, because if I would have known a lot of this information when I was in kind of my mid 40s, because you don't think about like, oh, I still have my period, I don't have to worry about, you know, the whole menopause thing, it's down the road. But what women don't realize is you need to start working on this stuff now in your late 30s and 40s, so that you don't blow up like so many women do. And like looking back now, I realize I wasn't dealing, let's talk about stress, I wasn't dealing with my life very well. So I was in an unhappy marriage. I drank way too much. I relied on wine to be my best friend in my sadness, in my darkest days. And I could easily drink a bottle of wine secretly, which was kind of taking my pain away. And then I eventually went through the divorce. But all of that emotional pain and that stress of unfolding a marriage and kids and being a single woman, even though at times I probably wasn't even eating enough calories, but I was still gaining weight. Let's talk about when, like, just pretend I'm the client that has just gone through this, right? And I've just gained all this weight. Like, what is your coaching to me? Like, what do I need to do to start getting rid of this, you know, this weight that I eat healthy, I go to the gym, I do my cardio classes. Sometimes I do 2 cardio classes back to back. I didn't know that was wreaking havoc on my cortisol and my body, but let's dive into that, because I think a lot of women will be able to relate to my story, and just pretend that you're my coach and you're going to teach me what to start doing to heal my body.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, one thing that you just need to understand, it's going to be like a bit of a mindset shift, because we are so accustomed and we've just been conditioned to think that more exercise, less calories means more weight loss or fat loss. And we need to really start shifting into thinking that, wait, we need to balance the internal first before the external will show. Right? So we need to get very, very clear on that. We then need to figure out, okay, what internal imbalances are we dealing with? Is the cortisol dysregulated? Is there like a dysregulation in that cortisol, or is cortisol just overall low? If cortisol is low, then your body's in that fat storing mode. So we're going to have to do things to support cortisol to allow you to release the weight. Maybe there's other hormone imbalances. Maybe there's a gut imbalance. Like maybe the liver needs more support. Like we really need to figure out what that individual needs. So like, I wish there was like a blanket thing we could all do and it would just solve everyone's problems. Like, yes, there's general advice and I'm happy to give it, but I really think we need to look at the individual, like who's asking, right? Who's asking this question and what are they experiencing and what are their test results show, and then kind of marry all of that together. So I would definitely say, like, let's do the right testing. Let's figure out what those imbalances are. What are those balancing opportunities that we have for you? And then while we wait for those tests, let's start supporting cortisol. Let's make sure that you're resting enough, right? A lot of the times women hear this term of like overexercise. yes, there's over exercising, but I truly think it's more under recovery that happens. You can still go and do your favorite exercises, but just make sure that you're giving your body enough rest to recover from them, right? So if you love like the Zumba class, or I don't know, like you like the high intensity training, like that's totally fine. But we just want to make sure that your body is getting sufficient rest. So maybe doing 2 back-to-back high intensity sessions or 2 cardio sessions back-to-back. Like I definitely would not recommend that for anyone, not even a young woman, right? Let alone like as we get older, we want to make sure that we're doing things to support our body instead. Taking a look at the food we're eating. We're all biochemically unique. You could eat healthy, but you might be eating foods that are actually pro-inflammatory to you. You might be eating a wrong metabolic type of diet for you. Like maybe you are someone who oxidizes food faster or slower. So we want to make sure that you are eating foods that are actually going to give you energy, not make you feel sluggish after you have them. So these are
I love this. It's so good.
These are all different things that we need to take into account, right? It's not just I'm going to have my salad and chicken and go do my Zumba, and I keep picking on Zumba. I don't know, but my Pilates, that's what I'm going to go do. There's so much more to that. So also, are we managing stress? Like, are we allowing our body the chance to truly relax? Or are we doing 1,000,001 things at a time and not truly allowing the body to rest and feel safe? Because a lot of the times, the reason why we hold on to weight is because the body feels like I'm stuck in this rut of this stress cycle. And so the body's like, no way, I'm not releasing any of this fat. I'm holding on to it because I'm going to need it for fuel, for energy down the road.
Yeah,
right? So like
I think you nailed it too with the stress is a big one. And that was my big aha moment is I look back, and this is a great exercise for women, is to like, what is your stress pattern? What has been your life cycle of stress? How have you been taught to learn how to deal with stress? It could be emotional, eating, it could be drinking. And I literally had to go back and realize, oh my gosh, when things started to like really turn dark for me in my teenage years, I went to alcohol. And then it's like you have to retrain and re-break that cycle to say, oh my gosh, when I'm stressed, I don't have to run to the bottle anymore. What am I going to run to? Is it, can I go for a walk? Can I do some deep breaths? Can I take a bath? Can I have a tea? And so it doesn't happen overnight. These are deep cycles for women, right? The wine is a big one that I noticed. And so I really had to kick that. And I think for you, Monika, you probably have to give advice every day for this, but giving women permission to slow down when we've been trained that it's not okay to slow down. And that was a big one for me. My first, I'm going to say coach that helped me through this was, if you're tired after you drop your kids off at school and you can go back and lay down for an hour and sleep, I am giving you permission. And honestly, that was some of the best advice, but also for me, the healing around just at the age of like 47, laying down on the couch at 10, is I had these little voices in my head from certain people in my family that rising like a monster for me. And so I had to like literally shut that monster off and say, almost like have that conversation and say, I need this. I need this right now. It's not forever. I'm just healing. Leave me alone. I'm going to have a nap. Do you want to just maybe comment and add to that? Because I think that's a big one for women where we feel, I don't know, if we're doing something like that, it's too selfish.
Right. It's either too selfish or not being productive enough. Like a lot of the women I work with, and I totally resonate with this, is like, I have that type A personality. And a lot of my clients do too. And unfortunately, like, it's great to like, there's nothing wrong with being having type A personality and liking things a certain way and being a go-getter and wanting things done. But you're also very hard on yourself and you don't allow the rest, or you feel like everyone else and everything else comes first, right? Especially in the role of being a mom or looking after, like even looking after your parents, or just having multiple responsibilities, whether it's your career or you're self-employed and you have a business, or maybe wearing all of the hats at once, right? All the time. And it's always alternating. A lot of the times we feel like everyone else needs to come first. And if and when there's time, we'll look after ourselves. But, just a gentle reminder here is you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot help the people around you if you're not well yourself. And the body truly is very miraculous and it knows what it needs. And if you're neglecting that time and that rest that it needs, it's just going to break down and say, you know what, that's it. Like, you're not doing anything else. You're lying in bed or you're lying on the couch and that's that. So it's so much better. It's such a more empowering action or step to take to make that choice for yourself that, hey, I'm going to rest so that I can show up and be more productive and have more energy later in the day. Then I'm going to try to power through everything and then end up like on the couch exhausted and not be able to cook dinner and continue on because I just don't have it in me.
I remember being so braggy about the like, hey, I'm part of the 5 a.m. club and I'm getting up 2 hours before my kids and I'm doing the do and I'm a rock star, and I look back and go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
who made up this 5 a.m. club, right? That push. And now, I'm 52 years old. I've been just over a year with no period. So I'm in post-menopause now and just learning about my body and the shifts and doing the do. And now I'm like, my body naturally wants to get up at about 6:30 to 7 is when my body gets up. There's no alarm clock. I just kind of listen to it. And it's almost like the wise woman. It's like, it's okay to listen to your body now. I give permission to listen to your body now. And when I'm tired at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, okay, she's tired. It's time. I had a long day. The old Nicole would have been never tuning into the wise woman inside. I'd be like, no, shit, I got 3 more hours of work. I got to catch up. And now my phone goes off and I know it's dinging and I know people are trying to get a hold of me. And my wise woman inside now just goes, wait till tomorrow or the next day. And it's okay for people to have to wait for answers. And if they don't like it, that's okay, because I'm taking care of me. It's taken me a long time to get here. But when you get here, it's so empowering, because now I know I'm role modeling for other women that need to see how I'm taking care of myself. And let's talk about that wise woman. I know you do work with women in menopause as well too. What advice do you give them when they're starting to go through where maybe their energy, maybe they need more sleep, and maybe they're just like, I need to sleep in a little bit more. Like how does that conversation go when you're talking to a woman in this transition?
Yeah. So truthfully, a lot of the women like the advice of, oh, I get to go to bed and I get to relax and I get to rest and do all this stuff. Like, it's almost like they need someone to basically tell them, hey, it's okay. And it's normal to feel like this. Because sometimes women say, like, I can't believe it's 8 o'clock and I'm already yawning. And my husband wants to watch a movie on Netflix or want to watch our show and I'm falling asleep. And he's like, like, I want you to have more energy so you can stay up. But the thing is you really, really have to listen to what your body needs. And in the beginning, you may feel like, wow, why am I going to bed all the time so early? But over time, your body will find that natural rhythm where you go to bed at a decent hour and you'll wake up at a decent hour and you won't be as exhausted. It's just, it comes back to rebalancing the internal and just giving yourself permission to do it. And honestly, when you do it once, it becomes a little like you crave it. You're like, ooh, I want to do that again because that felt really good. Like, it feels good to wake up refreshed and rested.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I've just written down a few of the things that you've been talking about so we can kind of recap and close this into beautiful episode off, where women are like, okay, this is really landing for me. I get that as things change, I need to do the work, the self-care. So let's just wrap up. We ended up talking in the beginning that you go to the doctor takes some results, gets back to you and says, everything's fine here, but you don't feel fine. And you go home and then you look for that one person that can help you reset and get your health back, and you go beyond the medical system. That would be someone like yourself, Monika. So go through as a summary, and I've got it on my list too, and I'm sure you'll cover it, but what are your five key things that you would like the woman today that's listening to consider when they're trying to rebalance their hormones?
So number one, go and get the right testing done. We need to figure out what are those balancing opportunities. Where can we balance things in the body? That's number one. Number two, choose yourself. Like, commit to yourself with courage and choose, like, consciously make the decision that, you know what, I'm going to prioritize myself no matter how long it takes until I feel really good in my body. Manage stress. And I'm not just talking the perceived stress of emotions and psychological stress. I'm talking like the deeper stress. Are the things that you're doing in life, do they make you feel good? Or are there times where you're like, "Ooh, I don't feel so good"? Notice, what is that? Is that a workout? Is that a food that you're eating? Is that a habit that you formed? Right? So don't be so narrow in terms of thinking about stress. Open up your mind towards like, what could be causing me not to feel so good? The other thing, so number 4, I feel like I could go on forever, but just stay hydrated really, really well. I feel like it's so easy to forget that, right? We focus on healthy eating and moving the body, but sometimes like drinking enough water just solves literally all of the problems. And support your liver. Support those internal organs like the liver, the digestive system. Don't think like, okay, well, I'm in menopause or I'm postmenopausal and I don't really have hormones to worry about. I know that they've plummeted. I don't have a menstrual cycle. I don't really need to do anything else. Don't think that. You still have a liver, you still have a digestive system. It's with you until you die. Support it, because those are really like your lifelines to living like that happy, healthy life.
Beautiful. I wrote all those down. We didn't touch on some of the things about supporting your liver. Maybe you could take that last bit and say, like, what are some of the things that a woman could do to support liver and gut health? What would that look like?
Very easily, you can incorporate this like starting right now. Include dark leafy greens. I personally love arugula. You don't have to have arugula, but it's just an easy thing to incorporate. Like any dark leafy green will do. They're full of antioxidants, polyphenols, and just in general, they nourish the liver, help it restore and create like that bile. So I would say dark leafy greens. Dandelion tea is probably like incredible at supporting the liver. So maybe swapping that out instead of having coffee all the time, incorporate a little bit of dandelion tea. And really, I think also making sure that there's movement in the body to keep things flowing will also help stimulate the liver. A good indicator of if things are moving or not is with your bowels. So if your bowel movements are stagnant, there's a pretty good chance your liver is a little stagnant too. So movement, I find in general, will help support that overall flow in the body.
Right. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we got that. And I'm down here in Mexico right now, and I literally have to put a list together for my kids to bring extra support for digestion. So I'm trying to order what I can offline, and I bought so many supplements down here, but I'm still missing some to support liver and digestion. So, you know, always tweaking it. When you're in a new country, you definitely need a little different support, right, when it comes to digestion.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Monika. What we'll do is we will definitely put some links so you can follow Monika. She does add a lot of value on Instagram, and I learn too from my mentors. I follow a lot of different women and health coaches and hormone experts, and I love learning, and I really want to encourage that for women. Is I want you to kind of be your own doctor, your own health hero. Not that we ever replace our doctors, because they are there for a reason, and we need them on our side and our team. But I always tell women, put your health team together. it's not just going to be one medical doctor, but you know, when I tell people like what my team looks like, I've got my medical doctor. I actually have a hormone doctor, medical hormone doctor that's holistic. I got a couple naturopaths I can lean into. I have a functional medicine practitioner. I have an osteopath. I have massage therapists. I have acupuncture. I have chiropractor. Like, I got the team, right? So I would say when an emergency comes, I'm just not going to get one advice. I'm going to go to my team and decide what is best for me, for Nicole. And I encourage people to do the same thing. Monika could be one of those heroes for you, where you can follow her, learn from her, get some testing from her, and we will put all of her contact information below on this podcast. Monika, thank you for joining us here from Toronto, Canada. We are so grateful that you get to share your expertise to women who are struggling with their midlife and their health and wondering what to do. I think you've given a really good perspective, and I am really grateful for what you have shared today.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I appreciate it so very much.
Thanks, ladies, for tuning in to another episode on midlife and conversation around aging. I want to say thank you for listening to today's episode. If this message landed for you, make sure to leave a review and tag me, Nicole Scott, at Gorgeous Gray Movement, and make sure to share with your friends. You can head over to my free Facebook community, Gorgeous Gray Movement, or subscribe to my YouTube channel for more inspiring interviews. If you are still struggling and need additional support, you can take a look at my website, nicolescott.ca, and learn more about my new Menopause Reset program that I'm so excited for. Until next time, ladies, be well and own your sparkle.